Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Looks Like We Made It. I'm Issy Howell and I'm joined by my dad Chris to talk all things video marketing. We are the father and daughter who run the video production company Howell Film, and each week we will be discussing all sorts like what happens behind the scenes on our projects, getting results from your video content, how to start using video in your business, and plenty more to come. We're always up for candidly conversing about creativity. On this episode we are discussing data integrity. So without further ado, let's get started, and of course never miss an episode every Tuesday by giving us a follow or subscribe, as well as finding Howell Film on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter and LinkedIn. Let's go!
Hey,
That took me a while.
That took you a while, that time, didn't it?
Yes.
So, data integrity.
What is it? Who wants it? Who needs it?
Okay, well, everyone needs it. Anybody that produces any sort of data, you put all your effort into making whatever you're making, and then you've saved it, and then what you need to do then is figure out worst case scenarios, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get this in early, all right? Which is my old man saying, there are two kinds of hard drives in the world, one that's failed and one that's about to fail.
Hence why we don't sleep, because we're always nervous about data.
Well, we're not nervous because we've got a really robust data integrity policy.
Because it's incredibly important, and when you are a video production company or you work in any kind of creative creative industry that requires information, it requires having stuff like footage or photographs or artwork, anything that's like there and you've just got it in front of you, you want to make sure that's backed up. You want to make sure you've got more than one copy somewhere else, because if you lose that, what are you going to do? That's the value of the job you've just done.
I think there's a number of things to discuss here. The first thing I would say is to do with quality equipment, and it's a bit boring, but it's worth pointing out that generally speaking you get what you pay for. So that's why you can buy a 50 quid hard drive, which will do a job, and it's great for general use, or it's great for in part of a multiple backup type setting, and then right up to really sort of expensive enterprise level drives that are designed for really heavy duty data management, really sort of hard hitting type drives. And obviously there's lots of different types of drives, but from our perspective as a film production business, we create vast amounts of data, and the value of that data is off the scale. I mean, it's interesting that we, all our kit is insured, and we've got, really nice, lovely cameras and nice lenses and everything. But actually, they can all be replaced. It's a bit of an old cliche, but the film, the content, the data you've created on a shoot, that can't be replaced, and that's the key. That's the key thing. Yeah. And I suppose you can sort of end up in a sort of like sphere of paranoia that it's like, well, I've got my data, I've got my backup, and it's like, ooh, but do I need a backup of the backup? And then do I need a backup of the backup of the backup? And before you know it, you're into this. But I think you just have to take a view, and I think a lot of it is to do with peace of mind. A lot of it is to do with, when you're dealing with clients that want to see or want to know that you've got a data integrity policy, a specific set of guidelines for handling data. Then it's good practice. It's good business practice to work in an organised, managed way, which is totally at odds to most creative people and most people in the creative industry, because generally speaking, most people have hard drives stacked up everywhere, external drives, internal drives, SSDs, the whole thing. But ultimately, if you've got a system the key thing is to define that system and stick to it. And
well, that's it. I think that the reason why we ended up even talking about this is that whenever we kind of take on bigger projects, the concept of data, it gets bigger every time. So when we first started working together a few years ago, we'd be there going, 40 terabytes, 40,000 gigabytes, that'll see us through.
Never fill that.
No, we'll never fill that. And then give it 6 months and we're already going, right, we need 80 terabytes, right, we need 100, we need 150, and it keeps growing and growing and growing.
Well, you double your trouble as well, don't you? Because of course, if you've got a 10 terabyte load of data, well, you need 20 because you've got to back it up.
Absolutely, and it keeps going, but that's the importance of backups, because the reason why, and I wanted to talk about this because I did see that thing about Toy Story, which fit perfectly with when we've been working with like building our data storage and everything, which is about how when they were doing the animation for Toy Story, they got pretty much towards the end of the film, and someone typed the wrong command into the computer and deleted 98% of the film.
Wow.
Like almost the entirety of Toy Story, a brilliant film, but it almost never existed. And they were all sat, and then Woody and Buzz just vanished off the screen, and it all went. And then the only thing that saved that film was the fact that there was a woman who was on maternity leave at home, and she had a copy backed up on her laptop at home, and that is it. And all they lost out of that was just a couple of days, and that is essentially the biggest fear of any editor or anyone who works with this amount of data. Like the filmmakers almost dump truck reverse the footage onto my doorstep, and then they just say bye, format their cards, and then they carry on to the next job. But we sort of tell filmmakers to get whatever you need and be creative and shoot whatever you want, and then it's up to the editor to decide what happens with it. But it's also up to the editor and us to work out, okay, how do we store all of that, and how do we keep all of that and protect it?
Yeah, protect it. I mean, the other thing about there's another side to this is there's storage, i.e. kind of dumb storage where time isn't a factor, and then there's storage and speed, and then there's storage and proper rocket speed. So what I mean is that you can get a big fat lazy old-fashioned hard drive that'll just whir away, and you can back your stuff up and it'll take 4 days to back up, and when you've got a copy, provided you don't need to access it that often, you're not working off that drive, it's there just to protect you. That's one route to go in. Then you've got the kind of like the in-between world of a RAID system, where basically you've got a bunch of hard drives joined together to create one hard drive out of many hard drives.
Beast of a hard drive.
Yeah, and also obviously RAID. I won't go into RAID now because that's a different topic. But there are different levels of RAID, and some offer speed, some offer protection. Generally speaking, if you go for RAID 0, which is the quickest option, provides no protection whatsoever. So you might have a 4 or 5 disc or 8 disc RAID array. If you've got it set at RAID 0, if one disk fails, you've lost the data of 8 disks or 5 disks or 4 disks. Or you can go the other way, you can go complete belt and braces, and you can have a mirrored system where everything's copied over everything all the time. So if one disk fails, you literally just pull it out, chuck it in the bin, stick a new one in, the RAID will build itself, and you're back up and running, and it's had zero impact other than the cost of a new drive. And obviously we use systems at different RAID levels for different things. I mean, we do have a RAID 0 machine purely for editing, but that's always being backed up constantly, just in case, and offsite as well. Yeah. The problem that we have, and people in our industry have, obviously, is that the cloud would be a brilliant solution. It's a brilliant solution for most businesses. It's a great way of, it covers all bases. All your data's off-site. It's all being backed up. It's all got the backup of these big corporate players. But when you're generating the data that we're generating, it's impractical to. There are people that do it, but for us it's impractical to start saving terabytes of information in one go up in the cloud, because it all becomes such a big. Like a big juggernaut to try and manage.
Whenever, from the editing perspective, because like I said, I get the dump truck of footage thrown at me, and the thing that you get is it's almost like when you try and distill all the footage down from a shoot into a 2-minute film or a 3-minute film or whatever it may be, there is a process of taking a giant pile of footage and squeezing that into a tiny hole, like a funnel. It's like a funnel where the bowl of the funnel is massive and the output that you're getting out is tiny, like a bit like one of those giant.
You still have to keep the.
But you still have to keep everything, yeah, because I might take 2 seconds out of one piece of footage that's actually 50 gig, and I might take a minute out of something that's a lot smaller. But what happens is that there can be that battle with congestion, and you have to weigh up the options of, do you go for speed versus size? So do I want everything in one place, or do I want to work on smaller things that are a bit faster? And you have to work that out. It's a bit like if you were working in different notebooks, but you had to keep each notebook in a separate room, and you had to keep going between one and the other, or you had them all stacked up in front of you. It's whatever, you have to work out how your workflow works best around the storage as well. So there's lots of things to consider.
Before you can dive into be kind of dynamic and creative and zany and off the wall, you've got to actually be incredibly disciplined and organised, and it's very structured.
When we say capturing footage as well, that doesn't mean the actual filming of it. So capturing is when the filmmakers will return from a shoot and they'll have all of their SD cards or their SSDs or whatever they filmed on, and then they'll pass me that, and then that goes in the computer, and that's where it gets dragged into specific folders and sections, and I'll even organise it down to morning or afternoon, or if it's specific people doing specific things, so you know exactly where everything is, and then they get thrown onto a big backup, and then I know it's there just in case, which is obviously what we're always prepared for. But my question to you is, how much of it is relying on or trusting technology versus you monitoring it and being diligent about it?
That's an interesting
because you do put a lot of faith into
you put an awful lot of faith into it, and actually that's a really interesting point, because I read a thing that businesses never test their backups, and they should. You should actually test a backup, and it goes back to even sort of, because there's another route which is tape backups, which sounds like proper old school, but that is also a thing, and back in the day we used to do some big tape backups, and it is interesting that when you come to use them, you stick them in the machine and it's blank. It's been backing up for the last 3 years and nothing's happened. So checking and understanding and the data integrity of your backups it is important, because it's like any insurance policy, isn't it? It's a waste of money right up until the point you need to claim against it. Backups, they're pointless. What a waste of time. I'm sitting here and it's whirring away, and I'm desperate to go home, and I'm going to throw a hard drive in my bag just so I've got a copy for the weekend or whatever. But in reality, should your office burn to the ground, get burgled or flood, then you're going to be a hero because you've got this backup. But like the example you gave. But generally speaking, touch wood, the office doesn't burn down, get burgled
this entire talk fits nicely with the fact that it was Halloween a couple of days ago, because we are terrified by talking about this. This is a ghost story for film companies. Exactly. But it's true. I'm literally clutching the wooden desk as we speak. But I think that it's also a case of with the whole thing of what if. You could go down those scenarios for ages if you'd want, but it's just that extra little peace of mind that, particularly with the pandemic, with working from home a lot more, and it's also, you have to consider, well, if we work in the same office and we work in the same place, we can't have all our storage in the same place. We have to consider that. There's a lot of things to consider.
Always have an offsite copy.
Absolutely.
Because the other thing as well is that, getting back to RAID, even RAID 5, it's still not a backup. It's still, that machine could fail, something could happen that all those drives failed. It's not a backup. It's more safe than OneDrive, but it still isn't a backup. A backup should be a copy, and it should be a faithful copy of something you can access when you need it. And that's the role of the backup. Like I say, it can become like you can go down the world of data paranoia. But it's almost like, I mean, I'm again, as you know, I'm quite sort of vocal on these topics. You should almost have to buy two drives. When you buy a drive, you should almost like have to buy another one, just so that it, because that's the other thing as well, is that a lot of people, for whatever reason, often financially or because it's always a chore, they treat the backup as a poor relation. So you do find a lot of people will have an old crummy drive stuck in the back of the drawer. Oh yeah, pull that out, reformat it. That can be our backup drive. But actually, that's the wrong way around. You ought to really have your really brand new super drive that's all lovely and clean, and that's your backup, because that's going to save you bacon.
Absolutely. And I think, well, that's the thing. It's like you can tell who works with data integrity regularly versus people who don't by the fact that how carefully you handle those hard drives. So they are so delicate, and you can't fling them on the chair or on the table at the end of the day. You have to be very, very careful with them. So how do you transport these drives? Do you put them in protective cases and shells, and like even how you look after them? Because almost it's a bit like just once that shoot's done, this is the only, until that's been captured by me or by an editor, that is the only copy, and it has to be carried with such care, and it has to be very, very delicate.
Did your ears prick up then when I said when I throw a backup in my bag then?
Yeah, and then I was like, no, you
no, I
don't.
don't.
You better not.
Yeah. The other thing as well is to bear in mind that we're talking about big data here, lots and lots of data. Obviously, data integrity also leads you down a route about data security, which is another topic, but it's quite important on this topic, because so say as an example, you were unfortunate enough to get a virus or get hacked, or your computers get, some horrible person hacks in and deletes everything or holds you ransom, whatever. By having an external copy not connected to your network, nothing to do with that moment in time, provides an additional level of protection, because of course it's not just theft, fire and flood, it's also horrible people.
oh, that's a very sweet way to put it. No, I think that's it. I think, I mean, it's easy to forget how important data integrity actually is, and it's not the part of our business that often gets seen a lot because it's whirring away in the background all the time. It's transferring overnight or uploading or downloading, whatever it may be, but it's absolutely essential for us. And obviously, if you are making films on your own or you are doing it yourself, always back it up. Never have it just on your phone, even down to the point where my paranoia is to turn into a therapy session now. My paranoia about backing up has become so intense now that I'll even save the project file to the Google Drive. I'll back up the workspace that I'm working in, because you end up into more of that. Well, what if? But it's for good reason, and the more time that we commit to caring for that footage and nurturing that content, that data, it is essential to what we do. But what happens after a year though? Normally,
well, you see,
1 year goes by.
As per the Howell film terms of business, that I'm hoping everybody's familiar with.
You should unscroll it like a.
I mean, it's impractical for us as a business to store raw footage beyond a year after the shoot, purely because we'd just be spending so much money on storage that it becomes so unruly. Is that the word?
Yeah.
Cumbersome. That's a better word.
I've been described as both.
It's just that, that you end up in a situation where it becomes just too massive, and it is quite sad, because when you do clear out some raw footage after a year or so, you are deleting a moment in time, you are deleting history, but we're here. This is a business. We're not.
And how terrifying is it to, after a year's gone by, to press delete on 3 terabytes of footage or something? It feels very wrong.
As we know, the moment you do delete some footage, even though you've spoke to the client and said, "Oh, we're deleting your footage," or whatever, you know full well that a week after you've deleted it, you'll get that kind of, "Ooh, can you remember when you shot this? We're looking for this shot," and then you got to say, well,
a year's passed.
Year's passed.
Well, that's the thing, and that year thing that we have, not that I'm blowing our own trumpet at all, but if you've listened this far, you must like us, so that's good, is the fact that if it's been a year and that footage has done nothing on our systems, it's not been used anywhere else, it's just the stuff that the client's taken away, the finished film, is what they're using and they're getting results from. That's great. But after a year, that might be the time to refresh anyway.
Exactly. And that's where we need to be talking to our clients to say, you need a new shoot, you need to refresh.
Because at the end of the day, and particularly while the pandemic's happened, is that sometimes if clients come back to us saying, hey, can you give us that footage from 2018 or 2019? The world's changed a lot since then. And during the pandemic times, you'd need to make sure everyone was socially distant or wearing masks, and the immediate time that project was shot in defines where it can be used. Because there was sort of when we've worked with people in the past who've asked for footage and they want to use that footage again but reuse it in winter when they shot it in the height of summer, and you go, well, or they shot it in Christmas and they want to use it in June, it doesn't work.
You're right. And also people smile. People used. Oh, what was that? People used to. Do you mind? People used to smile before 2020 as well.
I know, everyone looks so happy, but hey, I'm not going down that route.
Yeah, so data integrity. Oh, blimey!
Sorry.
Have a drink of water. Data management, data integrity, the value of data, and one of our clients and friends. Sanjay from the fire safety company. I knew that. He said that, I remember him saying to me that like businesses that have a fire but aren't adequately protected in terms of their data and other parts of their business, they don't recover. There's a massive percentage. Businesses that lose their data don't come back.
No,
that's sobering.
It's just as essential as anything really in business, and particularly for our business, it's very essential. And particularly when you're filming once in a lifetime stuff, if there's an event that's happening that's never coming back again, you do have that extra creeping, right? We have to make sure this is backed up. But okay, last question. Okay. This is not a silly question again, because
this is quite a serious one, wasn't it?
It was serious. I feel like I have to go back up this podcast just to be sure. Yeah, don't worry. It is backed up, so that's good. How do I put this? What was data storage like for you when you started when you were younger, many years ago? This
questions always go, you are so old that, well, interestingly, if you go way back to when I started in the creative industry, it was just storage, because there was no data. It was just storage. It was basically just a box. It was job bags. It was job bags with artwork in them. You'd actually take the artwork out and look at it and hold it to the light. And
so storage was just a shelf in a box.
Storage was a shelf in a box. Okay. So back in the day, it wasn't like now. I mean, obviously. Businesses used to back up their kind of vital sort of account stuff and management things on, floppy disks.
Oh, well, see, that's what I was going to come on to, which is I remember when I was at primary school, I was about 7 or 8, and we had an ICT lesson, and that was in the very early 2000s, and the ICT teacher held up a floppy disk and he was like, this is the future. Well, and actually, weirdly, I know it's not, and the lesson all went about looking at why it is a floppy disk, and it is genuinely a floppy disk.
It's a disk that is floppy. If you take, actually the inside is a floppy disk, because of course a 5.5 inch disk was it 5 and a quarter? I can't remember. That was actually floppy. You could actually bend it. Then they used the hard shell 3 and 3 inch disks, and the insides were floppy, but the outsides was hard. What is interesting with anything to do with data size is that you always think that'll never, it doesn't matter what it is. So and the same applies for, we've talked about this before, like 2K, 2.5K, 4K, 6K, 12K, 8K, all this stuff. You'll never need it. Well, in reality, it's just like an arms race. So I'm sure there's a camera manufacturer in the wings about to launch a 24K camera. And I'm sure that you'll be able to get 10 terabyte little SSDs in a matter of, and it's just, and then everyone will have 100 terabyte drives, and
then computers have to update,
and then computers have to update, and certainly it just goes on and on and on.
I wonder where it stops, but for all the editors in the world, we were hoping there's no 24K, because otherwise our eyes will just melt, I think.
Yeah, but in a sense,
I've got glasses already.
Obviously it's progress and the rest, but at the time you always think. I remember back in the day. If I say back in the day once more, I'm going to stop myself from doing it. But in the past, you get even like 1.44 megabytes. That's incredible. Or like when the first little MP3 players that came out, you can get 200 songs on here. That's incredible, and so on and so on and so on.
Well, that was a reel we did, just to round off, a reel we did a while back this year, was where we actually worked out how many floppy disks we would line up. So those floppy disks about a few inches wide, those little square ones. 3-inch ones.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. You're showing your age now.
Yes.
Those 3-inch ones. How many of those we would need to line up in order to fit 1 terabyte. So 1 terabyte is 1,000 gigabytes. It's normally the standard of footage storage that we use. And it was about 39 feet, I think. You'd have to line up 39 feet
of drives,
of floppy disks, in order to cater for what we do. And that's just not manageable.
Yeah. And the 1 terabyte is a little drive.
That's tiny.
When
that's
you
a
get
baby.
when you get into the big ones, well, anyway, yeah.
Yeah, we could talk about this for hours, as we probably have. It's gone dark at the time.
It actually has gone dark as we've been talking. So
this is why people don't invite us to parties. So,
okay,
right, well, that's it for today. If you do like listening to us, that's awesome. Thank you so much for the reviews we've had so far. If you could leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts, or listen to us on www.howellfilm.co.uk. If you've got a question or something you want us to talk about, or you want to be on the show, please let us know on the contact form on the website, or via LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and we'll be with you every Tuesday, including next week. Bye!
Bye!